Hello, everybody. Welcome to the channel member exclusive live stream for January. Yeah, it's January, so that's awesome, awesome, awesome. I see a few of you are already here. That is awesome. I'll say hello in just a moment. What was I going to say? We're going to talk tonight a little bit about retirement income ETFs. That's what you guys voted on, so I'm looking forward to that. And of course, whatever questions you guys have, this is your opportunity to drop them in the chat. We'll cover everything. We'll hash it all out. We'll have some fun. We'll talk about whatever you guys want to talk about, in addition to, of course, the retirement income ETFs. So anyway, without any further ado, let's quickly just say hi to those who are in the house. Enid is in the house right away with a hello, Candace. And we got Stan Gray as well in the house saying hello, all. And I just played around with the super sticker because I was like, I've never seen, I don't know how the super stickers work. I didn't know how the super stickers work. I played with one, does some funky little fist bump thing. Pretty darn cool. Pretty darn cool. Yeah, and yeah, exactly. I just kind of wanted to see how it looked because I've gotten like super chats, but I have never received. I may have received a super sticker and never realized it, but wanted to see how that looked. Enid says, I already liked the video. Perfect, perfect. Now, keep in mind, this is an exclusive video, so the like isn't as important for these ones. I like to see the like, but it's not as important. The ones that we're doing for everybody, those are the ones where it's really, really important. Ian is in the house saying hi. Hello, Ian. Good to see you. We got Paul in the house with a good old hi. We got Ann Kirk in here saying, hi, everyone. And Paul says, cannot see the member video on Android TV. Oh, wow. That's kind of weird. I did not realize that. Okay. Although, I suppose, well, it's hard to say. I wonder if you can see the replay. Try tomorrow and see if I'll let you do that, Paul, and then let me know. I'd be kind of curious to know whether you can see it or not. So the market today was pretty good. Well, I don't want to say pretty good. We were green, not by a lot, but we were at least green. And if you think about how deep in the red we were yesterday, we really didn't make up that ground. But still, it was nice to see a bit of a green day. Hopefully, those of you who were talking yesterday about maybe I should wait till tomorrow because the prices might go down a bit more. Hopefully, you guys didn't wait because the prices didn't really go down. Paul says I can Chromecast, but then I cannot type on the phone. Oh, right, right. And that kind of defeats the purpose of being able to throw your questions in the ring and all of that fun stuff. All right. So we're going to talk, like I said, we're going to talk a little bit about retirement income. Now, I think the actual thing that voted through was retirement income ETFs. But if you're looking at building a portfolio for retirement income, I think you also can't really ignore split core. So we're going to talk a little bit about split core. We're going to talk a little bit about covered calls, all of that fun stuff. Ian says, most of my stuff is red, buying stocks, dancing, and falling knives. Yikes. Yeah, wear a hard hat for that. Yeah, I think the market has been definitely interesting, but I think we're going to see a lot of this volatility the first half of the year. We're going to get those red, we're going to get red, we're going to get green. It's going to go red, green, and not in the duct tape fun laugh at the old guy way. It's going to be a funny market in that sense. But once we get to that second half of the year, that's when I see things starting to turn around. That's when I think we're going to start to see some of those rate cuts. Now, all of those people who've been expecting rate cuts early in the year, they're kind of getting disappointed because they're not really coming down, probably until about the middle of the year. Now, I know in the U.S., I think the U.S., we do have a chance of one in May. A lot of people thought it was going to be March. I still say May, and I'm holding steady to it. More and more people are starting to sort of say, oh, it's probably not March and maybe it is May. So we'll have to sort of see how that all works out. Okay, so when it comes to retirement portfolio, there's a couple of things that you want to look at. When we look at a traditional sort of a conservative retirement portfolio. So generally in a traditional one, you're looking at about 60 to 70%, which are going to be just equities. So that's your dividends, your stocks, REITs would fall in there as well. Then you're going to look at an additional 20 to 30%, depending, of course, on if you went 60 or 70 of your fixed income. So those would be your bonds, your preferred shares. And it's really interesting. The preferred shares, that actually refers to split core, which is kind of interesting because I almost would include split core as an equity, but I can understand why it falls under fixed income as well. Now, cash or cash equivalents, so 5 to 10% in cash or cash equivalents. So that would be like, for example, your cash ETF, so like cash or PSA. Those are basically there for when you do have really big market opportunities. You have a way to basically liquidate it and buy something. Like if your favorite income stock or income ETF goes way down, there's an opportunity to get a whole bunch at a cheaper price. So that's always a good thing. Let me see. Ian says, I have never bought bonds, but I'm sure Group RRSP has some. Probably. Now, bonds are not as popular as they used to be, for the simple reason that it's a lot harder to find bonds that really have a half decent return on them compared to what you can get on the market itself. But I guess the whole idea with a fixed income are things that are predictable. You know exactly how much you're getting back. That amount's not going to change. So that creates a little bit of a, I don't want to say a safety net, but a little bit like a safety net because you have that money you know is coming in. Because you take anything else, like take a covered call, for example. If you had a covered call, let's say you had HYLD at one point, that dividend did get cut. So, sometimes your dividends on ETFs, on covered calls, things like that, sometimes they do get cut. Sometimes they come down. So that's kind of one of those things that you want to look at. And as I said, with the cash or cash equivalents, that just makes perfect sense. Now, Paul's throwing in here. Let's see. Long-term bonds can go bad if rates go up. Yeah, and it depends on what exactly you're looking at. Now, keep in mind, too, another very popular vehicle is GICs. So right now, where we have higher rates, you can lock in some GICs with like 5.5. I think that's the highest I've seen is 5.5%. Have you guys seen anything higher than 5.5%? I'd be curious to know. That's the highest I've seen over at EQ Bank. I think it's on the 1 year and the 1.5 year that they had 5.5, but I have to double check. Now, those are going to, when we do get the rate cuts, those are coming down. You will see those 5.5s come back down into 4, probably into the 4 something. Depending, well, not initially. Initially, it'll go from 5.5 probably to 5.25. But they will come down as this starts happening. And yeah, Paul says Wealthsimple has no GICs or real actual bonds. No. So on Wealthsimple, your best bet with bonds is really you can get like a bond ETF. So that's definitely one way to go in that sense. But also keep in mind that Wealthsimple is one broker. So if you have, for example, EQ Bank, you can't get bonds with them, but you can certainly get GICs. And most banks will have that. I don't know who your bank provider is. Now, according to Enid, RBC offered her a 1-year GIC for 5.25. So that's not too bad. Ian says 5.5 sounds poor when you can get 4.5 in a Wealthsimple savings account. Yeah, absolutely. So that's another option as well. So high interest savings, in this case with Wealthsimple, 4.5. Or once again, if you use one of those cash ETFs, so like CASH, I believe they provide about 5% back, so as a dividend. So there are options out there when it comes, of course, to your fixed income. Now, I also mentioned too, the percentages I just broke down, that's a conservative portfolio. And normally I find with people who are at that retirement or nearing retirement age at this point, they do tend to fall in that conservative mindset when it comes to investing. They're not as big of risk takers. But I'll tell you, As we start getting, let's say, for example, when Gen X starts moving up there, and when the millennials start moving up that way, we're probably going to have seniors. I say in 20, 30 years, the seniors will probably be a lot more risky, risk takers. So it is definitely going to happen. Ian's throwing in, even bank stocks pay 4.5 in dividends or more. Yeah, yeah, absolutely, they do, and that falls into the whole equity part. But that's kind of one of those things. So with a good portfolio as well, even though we're focusing mostly on ETFs, you can still look at things to create a good little base. So right now, and this is a great opportunity. So some of the blue chips are offering some really good yields. So some of the banks, companies like Enbridge, um, there's some good deals out there. You can get some pretty good dividends with some great growth potential. But a lot of times, and it really depends on the individual person in retirement, a lot of times people are not really looking for growth at all. They're like, I don't care about the growth. All I want is to have an income that's coming out of my TFSA. So that way there, it doesn't affect any of the supports I have. It doesn't affect my taxes. I just want that tax-free income, because that's, and that's the thing. If you've got, let's say you have $100,000 sitting in your TFSA, and you've geared it to where you're making, let's say you're making 10% overall on that portfolio, that's an extra 10,000 every year tax-free. So it's not quite $1,000 a month, but it's not that far off. So that's one. Oh, that was weird. I just noticed on the screen that there was a video buffering or something. So hopefully that was only for me, but if you guys saw it, I don't know what happened there. Okay, and Paul says the Wealthsimple 4.5% isn't inside your RRSP. No, it's within the Wealthsimple cash account. So you'd have to move it into the cash account to get that 4.5%. So if it's sitting in your RRSP, it's just sitting in your RRSP. So you might as well, in that case, put it into something that, let's say if you don't want to spend it, at least put it into one of the cash ETFs. That way there, you're getting some amount of a return on it, right? Paul says, Paul is from Gen X. There you go, Paul. Nice, nice, nice. I am Gen X as well. So how many Gen X's do we have here? Probably a good number. We might, I don't know, we might have a baby boomer as well in here. I don't remember exactly where the cutoff is. There's no point in asking Starbucks to sponsor me on this because they're not channel members. Oh, that's good. Ian says that's a good point. Let's see. Equities don't fall for dividend traps. High yield can be a trap for a dividend cut. It can be. It can be, and that's where you want to be a little bit careful. And that's where you want to monitor too. If you're in a situation where you're looking at trying to max out your dividends, obviously you want to be really, really careful of the highest yields out there. So when you see, for example, there's a list on, if you go to TMX has a list of the highest dividend stocks. Yeah, you know what? Let's go there right now. Just give me a second. I'm gonna add my screen and we'll open up and we're gonna go to resource site, TMX Money. So TMX, by the way, if you guys don't know who TMX are, they are the company that owns the TSX. So they are the TSX. They have a lot of good things on here. But what I'm looking for here is these are the top markets by, let me just see here. They recently changed everything around. Here it is. So top dividend. So you can come to here and you can look. You can go right down and say, okay, this CUEH, so the CIBC US Equity Index ETF, Canadian hedged, right now is providing a, look at this, a 67.53, whoops. Air Canada wants to send me somewhere. Maybe it wants to send me to your place. I don't know. No, woo. All these little, there we go. Let's get rid of these ads. But yeah, you'll see 67.53%. But that's kind of like let's actually go into this. I'm just going to open this link in a new tab. We'll go over and take a look at this. So I come in, let's take a look here. Okay. I mean, it looked like it was moving in the right direction until recently, but look at this dividend, and it's a quarterly dividend of $4 and 18.2 cents. That's crazy. But let me take a look. I'm going to go into some key data on this and pull it up here and see what we got here happening. Their beta is not bad. Let's see, market cap just over 1 million, so that kind of concerns me a little bit. A price to book ratio, that's really weird. No return on equity. And now this is odd. And this is why you don't want to just jump into something like that. Look at this. So September 28th of 2000 and it's under my head. Let me pull it up a bit higher. There we go. September 28th of 2023. Look at this. Their dividend was 9 cents, so 9.3 cents. And it's jumped up to $4.18. So something hokey is going on here. I would not trust this amount. I would not trust this one just based on this alone. I think it's an artificially inflated one. And that's kind of what you end up seeing when you go through this list. Some of the top ones. So here's Montford Capital at 53%. So any of these ones up here in the 20s and 30s, I'll tell you, I'm a little bit skeptical of them. Now, some of them are split core. So DFN is one of these ones that I'm going to open this up and show you here. A lot of people in the community used to love DFN. DFN was great for the longest time, but split core don't do very well when the market's really bad. And I'll show you why. So right now it's got a 22% yield. That's fantastic. It's monthly, great. But let's take a look at this yield of theirs. We're going to go into our key data and we're going to come down here and look at their dividend payments. Look at this. No dividend, no dividend, no dividend, no dividend. And that's what happens when the market is bad. Split core can totally, completely fail you when your market is bad. And that's one of these things. People today keep asking me, is it time to get back into DFN? And I always say definitively, no, it's not time to get back into DFN. What I would say for DFN is maybe the second half of the year, it might be time to get back into some of these split core, but not at that point. Now, just to give you guys a little bit of an idea here, we're going to just leave that for a moment. We'll pull me back up big. So a split core, it's basically what it sounds like. There's two stocks. So basically it's split into preferred shares and capital shares. So on the preferred shares, they have a nice big dividend. And so they have a priority. So when they look at their earnings, they basically move everything to the preferred shares to meet whatever dividend goals they've set. Now, this also means return of capital. Return of capital happens a lot in split core. And what a return on capital means is, let's say, for example, you bought the share at $10 and your adjusted cost base is $10. And they pay out their dividend, but they don't have enough earnings to give you let's say $1. We'll say it's a 10%. They don't have enough to give you that whole dollar. Let's say they only had enough to give you 50 cents. Well, then they take 50 cents from your capital, from your initial investment. So even though you still have that stock, and it may still say that it's worth $10, but your average cost base will now be $9.50. So if you were to ever sell that split core and you didn't, well, if you have it in your TFSA, you don't have to worry about that part. But if you had it in a personal account, a non-registered, and you sold it, well, you would have that extra 50 cents of capital gain. So basically you would end up having, well, since capital gain is 50%, you would end up having basically an extra quarter of income, of taxable income. And that's kind of the way that they work. So they are structured to provide different types of shares. So the two different types, as I said, and it is one of those things. Now, yeah, let me get caught up because I want to really get over here to To Enid's last question here. So, okay, my goal is 12,000 a year, my TFSA. Hope to get there in a few years. That's not bad. If you can get $12,000 a year, that's $1,000 a month, and it can be done. Anne is a baby boomer, and Enid's a baby boomer. My mom's a baby boomer. There we go. Ian says, technically, I'm a millennial, but I don't feel like one. Yeah, absolutely. Well, especially if you were, because, most of the generations have a wide range. So if you were born at that cutoff between millennial and Gen X, so you were like one of the first millennials, you probably feel a lot more like a Gen X than you do a millennial. Paul says the WBA cut dividend, then share price crashed. So Walgreens, it happened to AQN too. Yeah, it will happen because when you cut a dividend, a lot of people are like, screw this, I'm getting out. And they do that. They get out. There's a lot of selling pressure because of that cut. So you do have that roll on effect of pulling the share price down when that happens. And they kind of know that that's going to happen when they cut the dividend. But at that point, they're sort of saying, well, okay, we can weather that better than paying out that full dividend, especially if they're in a situation where their debt is out of control. Holy banana bread, 65%. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Let's see. Ian says my dividend traps were BHP, BNS, and ENB. Not exactly shaky companies. Yeah, and here's the thing. Both BNS and ENB, I think they will long term get themselves around more ENB than BNS. And here's this neat thing about ENB. Gonna bring this back up here again. There we go. I want to show you. This is another split core. It's called ENS. We'll pull this up. So as you'll see, it's called E-split core. All right. Now what they do is they only invest in Enbridge. So everything they hold is in Enbridge, but they pull off this bigger yield of 12.818%. Now, this is one of these split cores. I do like this one. And I'll show you. Let's go over to their key data. We'll come down and look at their dividends. So you'll see they've actually been very good at paying out their dividends. So they're one of those ones that have not been cutting. So let's say, for example, if you like Enbridge, but you're looking to get a better income, then because Enbridge is like a little over 7%, this is not a bad option, this ENS. So it's one of the few ones I found that did okay even during the bad times. Whereas, some of those ones from some of those like DFN and ones similar to that ended up cutting dividends whenever things got a little bit too shaky. But ENS didn't. ENS has been pretty darn good. And I think there's a lot of people in the community actually that really love ENS. Let's see. Dividend stocks Rock are recommending CPX that has a dividend of 6.48%. Let's take a look. All right, CPX. Here we go. And so CPX is a good old Capital Power. And so right now, here we go. So 6.645%. It's a quarterly dividend paid out in the amount of 61.5 cents. Let's go take a look at their key data here. All right, now one like this, very low beta, so they're pretty stable. You don't have a lot of volatility on them. Like another thing here, debt to equity. So their debt to equity is 1.18, so that's not too bad. So they don't have a ton of debt. They got good earnings. Their PE ratio is pretty low. And I want to see one more thing here. Where is it at? Where am I at here? Oh, I'm not seeing it. I don't know why I'm not seeing it. Oh, it's probably because, yeah. Oh, here we are. Return on equity. For some reason, I was looking for, I don't know why, I was looking for ROE instead of it's spelled out. So let's see here. So it's actual ROE, 17.94%. So yeah, this is not bad. We'll take a look at their dividend here. Yeah, look at this. They've had a history of increasing their dividend. We'll go a little further back. Yeah, This is not bad. This is not bad. Everything looks pretty good on this company. So CPX, and Capital Power, I mean, they are a good company. So yeah, I think you're fine with CPX. I think Dividend Stocks Rocks has a good one on that. I should do a deep dive. Well, I'd love to do. Sometimes I want to do a deep dive, but nobody will vote for the company, and I'm like, no. Like I really last year wanted to do a deep dive on HPA, or sorry, HPS.A, the other Hammond company. And it's one of those ones, but I couldn't get it through the vote. Couldn't get it through the vote. I was like, no. And of course, Jill told me, just do it anyway. It's your channel. I'm like, no, no. Everybody loves the vote. So it didn't happen. So you lose capital with a split core. Yeah, if they're not making enough money. Now, in a bull market, you won't lose a lot of capital. You may, if it's really good, you probably aren't going to lose any capital at all. But also keep in mind too, Enid, that if this is sitting in a registered account, it doesn't matter. It absolutely does not matter, because it's like, it's just a no-brainer, because everything's tax-free. So even if you sold it in your TFSA, the capital gains don't happen. So, or your RRSP, for example, as well. So Ian's been thinking about buying more CPX. Well, we just looked at it. I like CPX. Oh, whoops, I should bring me back again. Or before I do, I'm just going to come back over here for a second here. So yeah, that's what I'm just saying. When you come into something like this, I just want to finish this point here, is that anytime you see these higher yields, you really want to look a little bit deeper, because you'll see that there's just a lot of different things. Now we start getting down here into some of the covered calls. And at that point, you can get higher ones, but we're going to talk about covered calls here in a bit anyway. Let's see. Paul says, and here, I'm going to pull myself back up big again. Paul says, when I still worked for TELUS, I rode T.TO from $34 all the way to $22. Yikes. Yeah, that's, I am not, I know a lot of people keep asking me, is it time for telecommunications? And it's not time yet. I think there's still a lot of pain left for TELUS and Bell, a lot more for Rogers. Like if I had to get a telecommunication company, actually, you know what? If I wanted some exposure to the telecommunications, I would probably invest in Quebecor, just to be honest, opposed to the other ones. Uh-oh. I got a cat in here looking for treats. Come here. I will show you guys the kitty. Oh. Say hi. Say hi. Hello. So sometimes we get a cat in here looking for treats. I'll just give her a couple of these and she will be all fine. So yeah, Quebecor, I think is probably one of your better choices right now. They actually are growing. All right, here we go. We'll close this all up. All right. Let's see. Paul says, qualifier for dividend stocks rock. Mike H says, don't blame me if you lose money. Well, that's true. That's honestly, that's true with everybody on YouTube or whatever. You always have to take a certain level of responsibility for your investment decisions. And that's why I always say, even if I give you a stock and you look at it and it's like, oh my God, that's the best stock ever. And I'm like, oh my God, that's the best stock ever. You still want to do your due diligence, right? Because it's your money. If you go and throw something and, let's say I bumped my head that day and was seeing double or something, and, you could get yourself into a little bit of trouble. So definitely always do that due diligence. I would hope that if I bumped my head that hard, I would take the day off. But there are YouTubers out there that are not, they're not your friends. I'll just say it that way. They're simply there for the money. They're not looking out for you at all. Like those are the ones, and you don't see it as much in Canada, but you do see it sometimes in the US. Those are the ones who will do like pump and dump, where they will tell you, well, they'll first of all, they'll go and they'll buy a bunch of stock in some company that's not that good. And then they'll come and they will tell you it is about to explode. It's the best company out there. And you got to get in on it. And then all of their followers, all of their subscribers start buying up all this company, all this stock. And the price responds because it's a smaller company, right? That's why it's always a smaller company that they do it with. The price goes up, they sell. And then, of course, the price eventually falls. And most of the people who bought in, usually a lot of them get burnt right away just from that YouTuber selling all of however much they put in it. And usually it's a sizable amount. So you will hear of that from time to time in the States. Now, I know the SEC has started cracking down on some of those YouTubers, which is good, which is really, really good. So Ian says, what is a good debt to equity ratio? Is it different for every company? Do you have to compare it to their peers, or is there a rule of thumb? Okay. It depends on the business and the sector. So usually it's by sector. So when you say compare it to their peers, that is absolutely true. So for example, I mean, the best debt to equity ratio is as low as you can get it. The lower, the better. I love to see it under 100%, because then that means they have more equity than they have debt. But some businesses, so if you have a business, for example, that is either expanding rapidly, they will usually, a lot of times a business will expand by taking on the debt to allow them to expand. So you take things like that into consideration. Or if you are a bank, you take a bank. Banks always have higher debt to equity ratios. You're never going to find a bank with a debt to equity ratio under 100%. And that's simply because that's the nature of banking. You're lending money. So when I go to a bank, so let's say I went to a brand new bank and I deposited $100,000. Well, they use my $100,000 through the fractional banking system, but they still owe me that $100,000. So that actually gets counted as part of their debt. So that's one of the reasons, like like successful bank has a high debt to equity ratio because a lot of money has been poured into that bank. So that's one of the reasons that you see really high ratios with banks. So if you're looking at a bank, compare it to another similar bank. And that will give you a better way of looking at their debt situation, and then compare it to what's going on. So always, it's kind of this thing with fundamentals. Never rely on any one fundamental, because you can have a great looking fundamental, but then the rest of your fundamentals can be in the doghouse, and that company may not do very well. So always sort of keep that in mind. Look at the big picture. Don't look at any one piece and sort of make a judgment based on that one piece. Vic is in the house. Hey, Vic, good to see you. Kitty grows so fast. Yes, and she grows in more than one way. We were actually putting her on a diet because and it's odd too, because we have 3 cats and she's the only one that's for some reason fat. We don't know why. And her name is Autumn. So Autumn says hi back to you, Paul. What a treat to be here. Yeah, I'm so glad to see you. I'm glad to see that you made it. And Ian says telecoms would be in a world of hurt if they had to compete globally. We pay so much for cellular and internet in Canada compared to the rest of the world. Yeah, we do. And it's funny. I worked for a very short time for Rogers, and when I was there, they were in cahoots between the 3 big ones, so Rogers, TELUS, and Bell. So pretty much if one of them wanted to do something, the others would do exactly the same thing. And it was kind of like an unwritten rule. So it's kind of, and a lot of it is to keep the prices high. And that's the big issue. So one of the things I'm hoping with Quebecor is where they bought Freedom. I'm hoping to see them become more of a national presence. And as they grow, I think that could be good for like cell phone plans and prices down the road. So we might see a little bit of a better, but now this is where, as investing, right? Investing in the telecoms, as Quebecor starts to make more inroads, it's good for their stock, but it's not the best for the big 3. So just something to keep in mind. Oh, Vic. Vic's never going to let this go, Ian. He's never going to let this go. That is so funny. Vic says, two of the ladies from Rogers quit the board. Stock should skyrocket. Now, that's going to be hard for Rogers to skyrocket right now. Right now, they've got so much debt from buying Shaw. And it's interesting. I used to like Shaw. I used to invest in Shaw. And then the morning that Rogers announced they were buying Shaw, I watched the Shaw price go through the roof, and I sold right then and there because I was like, I don't want to be part of Rogers. So I did sell. I got out of Rogers at that point. Trevor's in the house saying hi, y'all. Hey, Trevor, good to see you. Now that I am at 295, I got a Tinder date tonight. Holy banana bread, Vic. Look at you. You're totally turning everything around. You know, you quit smoking, you're getting your life into shape. And now maybe I remember a couple of live streams ago, you said you were planning to get married. So there's the first step. Good for you. Good for you. There we go. And Ian says, you should do a Big Six bank comparison video. Probably do good for views. Actually, every quarter I do a review of the Big Six, so they kind of get a little bit of a comparison in there. But yeah, I I think that's not a bad idea. So bank comparison, not a back comparison. Oh, of the Big Six backs. Okay, yeah. Which one can hold the most weight? Which one's the hairiest? Yeah. Good old backs. All right. So yeah, we did talk a tiny bit about the split core. Now, the other big thing out there is covered calls. And covered calls are pretty popular. And there are people that will absolutely, there's people who absolutely love the covered calls. And there are people who absolutely hate them. So you are going to get both in and that way. So here's the thing. So basically, a covered call is you're taking part of your asset. So with a regular covered call, so let's say, for example, you had a stock and you were going to do covered calls on, now you can do it on an exchange, on a basket of stocks. But for simplicity's sake, let's just say we were gonna buy Enbridge. We were gonna do covered calls on Enbridge. So we would take a certain percentage of the portfolio. So a lot of them take about 33%, somewhere's in there. Some take up to 50%. But we take that and basically we write options on it. So basically we're going to write, most times it's going to be a long. Usually it's longs. So we basically say, okay, well, we think this price is going to be at this value by this date. So we would write a long. So a type of option that says it. Now, somebody who thinks that we're wrong will buy that option. So they buy it by something called a premium. Now, what ends up happening is that premium, so that's a fee, that comes right back to us. And that's where all that extra money comes from, is from all these premiums that we pull it back. And we, okay, I see. I'm sort of looking at the questions that I haven't gotten to yet. I'll just jump ahead here to catch up. R1 rating. I love EQ Bank. And what do you mean by a long? All right. So let's say Enbridge is at $50 right now. It's less, but I'm going to use that for easy sake. And I want to write a long. And let's say I think in 1 month. So we're going to just use 1 month as a simple time frame. So I write a long that says, basically an option that says, okay, in 1 month, I think Enbridge is going to be $55, and then somebody who wants to bet against me, well, they would have to buy that contract. And then let's say, for example, I put a fee up for, let's say I put a fee on there for $2.50. Then they would have to pay me the $2.50 to take that contract. Now, as long as Enbridge hits that target price, I get to keep the contract whether it does or not. So the premium is mine, so that stays. If I hit that contract, then I get to keep my stock. which is fantastic because then I keep the stock. The person who made the contract, they paid that premium. They don't get anything back. Now, if I fail, if the long fails, well, then yeah, um, there's that point where they get to buy it from me at a cheaper price. So there is, it's just the way that options work. Options are really complicated, and you don't have to understand exactly how options work to be able to take advantage of covered calls. So basically, covered calls are basically betting. They're making these little bets on where they think the price is going, and people are choosing to buy those bets. So if somebody buys in and they lose, um, you know, basically the stock makes a lot of money. Whereas, but here's the problem too. If, for example, if the price goes really, really high, because of the way the strike price works, you don't get the full benefit as if you would. So if you had owned Enbridge, and let's say Enbridge went all the way up to 60, you would not get that full benefit. So it's kind of that funny way, the way covered calls work. But you do get an incredible dividend, which is kind of the whole point of the thing. So covered calls are not really designed for growth per se, but you do get some growth. They are they are designed though to produce income, and that's kind of what you're looking at. Now, because they do own the underlying asset, you do get the growth when that grows as well, which is great. However, um, some will also do that return on capital. So there are some, not all, and I would even say that it's probably a minority, but there is some covered calls that will, if they don't make enough premiums to pay the dividend that they promised, some of them will use a little bit of return of capital. But once again, if you're holding it in a TFSA, it's not an issue, not at all. So, and you have longs and you also have shorts. You probably heard about shorting the market. So shorting the market is the other side of that. So when the market's doing poorly and things are going down, that's where you make a bet. You make a bet that it's going to hit a specific strike point that's lower. So you're shorting the market, and the person who takes that premium is betting that that the stock isn't going to go down. So it's basically just two people betting against each other. But if you have a covered call, normally the managers who are doing that, they're experts at technical analysis. They know what they're doing. And sometimes in worst case scenarios, you have to, so for a short, for example, if it's going, let's say it was at 50 and you said it was going to go to 40, and it doesn't get to 40, well, the premium that you wrote means that if it doesn't get to 40, you still have to sell it to them at 40. So you end up selling some of your shares, you end up buying back, but the object is you want to still make sure that that premium is enough that you're still in good shape. And it's kind of the fun. It's all about premiums. So anyway, I'm starting to ramble. I'm going to try not to ramble too much, but that's kind of the way these covered calls do work. Now, one of the things is sometimes people say, you'll hear also the word erosion of capital. And it's not that the capital has erosion per se. What's happening is when the price of that underlying asset goes down, obviously that price of the covered call is going to go down as well. So when the market goes back into a bull market, you will get that back. But here's the funny thing. Covered calls actually do better in some of the worse, the more volatile markets. So the more a market is choppy, the better you're going to do with covered calls, like as a management of a covered call. So that's kind of the whole structure of covered calls. They kind of work in a fun little way. And it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. Now, I have heard some people actually sort of describe it as saying, well, you don't have to worry about that erosion on the price because you're getting such a big dividend. I'm that person who loves total returns. So I'll look at whatever share, whatever the price of the share falls, and then I'll add it to the dividends, and I'll look at that total return as my decision factor. But, and this is the thing, where the arguments, when it comes between people who are like, no, total returns are better than straight up passive income and, and covered calls and things like that. Not if you're trying to create an income generating portfolio. So that's where the retirement part comes in, because if you're in that point where you just want income, you don't care about the growth. You're not super concerned about the growth. You only want all that tax-free income because it's improving your life. Like, for example, if Ian has his $12,000 in passive income coming to him every year, that's $1,000 a month. That's not affecting any of his supports. It's not creating any kind of tax issues. That's just an extra $1,000 tax-free every month can help most seniors really, really, really well. So that's kind of that whole thing when it comes to covered calls. So it's kind of interesting. Covered calls they're not bad. They're not bad. They have their place, and I think a retirement portfolio is definitely if if you're looking for income. Now, there are some seniors who are like, no, I don't care about the income. I just want to build, a really big portfolio because it's all about leaving it behind for my loved ones when my time is done. Well, in a case like that, yeah, you're probably not going to have as many covered calls. You're probably going to have more total return in that case. And that's fantastic. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with either or, really, to be honest. Okay. And Paul says, or the fund manager will say, we are returning good ROC. Um, yeah, it really depends. Like if you're not in a registered account, I can't honestly call any ROC good ROC because you know it's basically creating more taxes for you if you do sell. But when you're in a registered account, ROC, it's not even really an afterthought. Um, yeah, it really, really, really isn't. Ian says, I just realized I already get more than 12,000 a year in my TFSA. Bought a bunch of Canoe this year. Nice. Yeah. I love Canoe. Canoe is like an ETF. They're not technically an ETF, but they are an income fund. So they do have they do have a basket of companies, Canadian and US. Most of them are in the energy, healthcare, and financial sectors. Um, Ian says maybe I should not be talking about it. Yeah, yeah, Ian. if we all ever meet up with Ian, he's Daddy Bucks, not Starbucks. He's Daddy Bucks. You know that one from Richie Rich or something. I think there was a Daddy something Bucks or something. I don't know who it is, but that's who Ian is. So if we ever meet up with Ian, he's gonna buy us all lunch. I'm positive of it. I'm not entirely positive, but I do think so. Let's see. If you do total returns on Enbridge versus Alimentation Couche-Tard, ATD wins. Yeah, Alimentation Couche-Tard is really, really, really a fantastic stock. Let's pull it up. You know what? Because the proof is in the pudding, right? Let's come over here and we'll do ATD. All right, so here's Alimentation Couche-Tard, and let's take a look at their 5-year. We'll start at their 5-year. Like, look at this. This has just been straight up, 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 up. So they've gone from, in 5 years, they've gone from $37 to $81. So they're definitely, definitely going up. Even if you look at just the last year, look at this, you still have that big movement up. So this is when, this first half of this year was was a little crap, but the year did pick up. 3 months. Let's go to 3-year. Even the 3-year. So this is through a bear market down in here. There was a bear market. Didn't even phase them. So yeah, this is one of my favorite stocks. If you guys remember when I did the tier list, those of you who watched it, it's one of the I think it's a community, it's a channel member video actually. Or did I do it on? I don't know if I might have done it as a live stream, maybe. Anyway, when I did that, Alimentation Couche-Tard was definitely one of the tops. Them and another company called Brookfield Asset Management are two that I absolutely just love. And let's see here. See, Warbuck. Was that his name? Daddy Warbucks? Yeah, maybe. That sounds kind of familiar. Anne says, when EV comes in, Alimentation Couche-Tard will have to install tons of EV charging stations. How will this affect? Well, it depends. I mean, keep in mind, EV is going to be phased in slowly. So they have the option of phasing in EV charging stations slowly. Pull this here away. So yeah, they do have that option of going slow. They don't have to go really, really fast. So I don't think it will actually impact them too much at all. If anything, if you think about it, with the amount of convenience stations and gas stations that they own, they may just want to do that anyway, just as an extra service to pull people in. So, and keep in mind too, I also think we're at a point right now that, and we've kind of people have hinted at this on some of our chats. We're at a point that the power grid couldn't even handle a fast conversion to EV. So look at Alberta. Alberta last week, they were like, please don't use electricity unless it's essential. Because they were worried about brownouts. And it was funny because some folks here, like Vic, maybe, were watching me, which I was thinking to myself, I guess this makes me an essential service. So I was happy with that. That was kind of funny. But yeah, so I don't think EV is going to hurt Alimentation Couche-Tard at all. Ian says charging stations would be good at restaurants. Yes, absolutely. Even if you pick up 30 minutes of charging while you're in there, more time to charge, or movie theaters, maybe at Costco or Walmart. Yeah, exactly. And here's the beautiful thing too. You can charge from home too. So there's that option as well. So, and really interesting thing, I was watching some stuff on batteries, and there's a lot of really interesting battery technology that is on the horizon. And if we end up moving away from lithium and going with some of these really cool battery solutions, we could get to a point where batteries will become cheap. So imagine if batteries are cheap enough and versatile enough that you could actually own more than one battery for your car. Just have an extra battery in the trunk that you could pull out and just swap in. Now, I don't know if that's feasible. I don't know if they're even working on that part, but I know they are working on everything from sodium ion batteries. They have Microsoft has been using AI with this other company to try to come up with a compound that will basically push lithium out of the battery scenario. And I actually watched a little video today that there's people working on nuclear batteries. So, we're not talking like major nuclear. We're talking about things like tritium that would decay within a battery, and they would use the heat from it to create electricity. But imagine if you could have a battery that would last for 50 years without needing any kind of charge. So there's a lot of interesting technologies out there, and that's one of the reasons that you always want to sort of keep your eye to the news and to science and technology and see what's coming down the road. Because if you're like a person who's right now, I would not get all into lithium, because if these things start happening, lithium may be something that will probably still be popular for a couple of years, but maybe further down the road it won't be as popular, and that could be something to sort of keep in mind when you're looking at your longer term outlooks when it comes to the market. See, Paul says there is a pushback on EVs. There is, absolutely. If you guys remember Hertz. So in the summer, the EV market forgets that when winter comes, EVs don't do great. So there is that. There's also the whole thing with Hertz in the States, where they were getting rid of 20,000 EV vehicles to go back to gas, just because of the cost of repairs when there's collisions with these vehicles. So definitely something. Ian says, remember graphene? I do remember graphene. Is that tech going anywhere? I haven't heard anything about graphene. So I don't know where the state of graphene is right now, but I do remember at one point people thought it was going to be sort of very revolutionary. So graphene, maybe it'll come back. So it's just one of those things just to sort of keep in mind. It's going to take a while, I think, for things to change, but There's just, and this is the whole thing. Like, people don't understand about AI. So I'll give you an example. So when Microsoft is working with, and I can't remember the name of this other company. It was like, I think there was a couple of P's in the name. So PPNL or something weird like that. They were trying to find a compound that would work in batteries, that was cheap and safe. And they basically put in all of the parameters into this big AI system. And so AI found basically about 250,000 candidates. So 250,000 possible materials that could be used. Now, if you think about it, the old days, if you have 250,000, you'd have a scientist that would have to test each one by one to try to figure things out. So within, within minutes, they could pretty much feed all the criteria, extra criteria into the AI and have it narrowed down to like 250. And now apparently they have it narrowed down even further, and they're really making some big progress with some of these materials. So it's going to be really, really interesting. AI, whether you're a fan of AI or not, it's a shortcut. AI has basically become a shortcut for pretty much everything. So anything that before that used to take, months or years of footwork to get something done, by using AI, people and scientists and manufacturers and engineers, entrepreneurs, they're just finding ways to get there a lot faster. So we haven't even seen the beginning yet, which is kind of that interesting thing. It's one of the reasons that I say that I'm still pretty hyped on tech. So that's just one of those neat things. Speaking of tech, those of you who like those purpose high yield funds, like the Tesla one and that, they did open 2 new ones today. They did for Microsoft and NVIDIA. So they got a couple of them that came out today. So they're adding a bit more. Now, the Microsoft one only has a dividend, I think, around 6% on that one, because it is, once again, it is a covered call. But that's one that does have that potential for a lot of growth. So I think you could see a lot of growth on that one as well. Let's see here. I think it was overhyped. Purpose USD Cash Management Fund MMU.U ETF says it is commercial paper and T-bills. So what is commercial paper? So commercial paper is basically, it's a form of, it's almost like an IOU. So it's a loan that businesses will do with each other. So for example, let's say you need to cover your cash, not your cash, but your payroll. They can do this loan through what's called commercial paper, where they give you the funds to cover your payroll. So it is a form of, it's like a bond in a sense, but it's called commercial paper because it's normally going between different businesses. But yeah, that's what commercial paper is in a nutshell. Ian says, I remember when Segways were going to be the next big thing. I remember Segways. Yeah. They never happened. Well, I mean, once again, up here in Canada, right, you'd get what, like probably 4 or 5 months a year that you could use one. And I think like places like San Francisco, maybe people use them a bit more, like Los Angeles. But yeah, they never really did become big, did they? What are the tickers for the new purpose ETFs, please? Oh, gosh, that's a really good question. Well, let's go find them. All right. Purpose high yield. All right. We'll get in here. Funds. Let's go to their top funds. There's the Purpose Bitcoin. There's the Tesla one. All right. And we want to go back to the yield shares. All right. Well, back to yield shares. There we are. All right. Let's take a look for you. All right. So here we are. So the Microsoft one is MSFY, so with 6%. The NVIDIA one is YNVD at 10.2%. So there are the new ones. So they still have the Tesla one, YTSL, at 22.5. Now, I've made I've made a crap load of money with that one. When Tesla does really well and Tesla's in for some good times, the value on this one pulls up immensely. So you can actually make some pretty good returns on it just from the growth. So by swing trading, this is a great one to swing trade. Even though it has a great dividend, even though it has a good a good distribution of 22.5, I've made most of my money from swing trading it. So, it's just one of those things. I know there was one day, and I've told the story before, but it was one of the, oh God, when was it? It was I think it was just towards the end of the summer, and Tesla had an earnings call on the day before the ex-dividend date for this. And so I kept it. I was thinking, well, worst case scenario, at least I'll get the dividend the next day. But I did suspect, because Tesla at that point was still on the way up. And yeah, they had a great earnings call. And I looked at it in the morning, and normally on the ex-dividend day, you go down because, whatever amount of dividends are going to be paid out, that's deducted from the market cap. But in this case, nope, it was way up, like way up. Like I sold it all that day, and I made, I can't remember how much, but it was more than $1,000. It was just like nice. It was all just bang, nice swing trade, boom, made it. Thank you. It's in the pocket. So I love that. That was just absolutely fantastic. All right. Ian says, NFTs ever coming back? Anybody want to buy a monkey? NFTs will come back, but not in the crazy way that they were before. Let me pull this back up here. So yeah, you will see NFTs return, but I think you'll see them in a more practical sense. You're not going to see them, you're not going to see Bored Apes. You're not going to see those things regain their value. But where you will see it is, like, for example, let's say someday you'll have like an NFT for your car that proves that you own your car, or for your house, and provides an authentication so that there you can authenticate to get into your house or into your car. So I think you're going to see things like that, and maybe NFTs for sort of like a manifest in that sense. So I think the more practical side of NFTs will definitely come back. And it's not that they've ever gone away. They just haven't been front and center. But I think that's what you'll see. The crazy stuff that we've seen during the pandemic, it's not there. We don't have, like, people don't have all of that disposable income to throw away on Bored Apes at this point anymore. So they're pretty much done. All right. Enid says, you do swing trades in non-registered account? Yes, absolutely. Yeah, you can't really do well, you can do swing trades in your RRSP, but you don't want to do them in your TFSA, because you can get the CRA very annoyed at you and end up with a tax bill. Ian says, I am surprised VR is not bigger than it is. It's kind of interesting. I mean, all of the whole thing with virtual reality, and augmented reality, it was all kind of forefront and moving in the right direction. And then we ran into that situation where AI's kind of pushed it aside. But keep in mind, we got those new goggles coming out from Apple. I think you can buy them now. So we are getting to see more of it come in, and it is going to come back in. But keep in mind, you may not hear as much about it, because I think AI is going to be front and center probably for a long time. And Enid does it in her Lira. Okay, there we go. So yeah, it's just one of those things. So swing trading, definitely a good way to make some extra money. The nice thing about swing trading too is you really can, you can do long trades. You don't have to make things too crazy. Let's see. Paul says Apple got updated by Bank of America for a 20% price upside. Stock up 3.26% today. Nice. See, that's pretty darn good. And we can actually look at that, because I have. Let's pull this up. We don't normally look at that on here, but let's pull it up anyway. Whoa. Why are you seeing that? Mm-hmm. Oh, I think I'm sharing a window and not, okay, that's fine. I'm going to do this. Watch this. I'm just going to bring this over and stick it in that window. And there we go. There we go. That worked. I just have to remember to put it back for the live stream. And look at that. Yeah, right there. Look at that. Apple 3.26%, Meta 2.11, Google 1.42. So yeah, well, it's not a bad day for tech on the US market. That's for sure. All right. There we go. Ian says, "Holy banana bread! The disco down the street is pumping. Might go check it out after this." Okay. I guess disco maybe is not dead, but alive and well in South America. So that's a lot of fun. Lots of loud music. Absolutely. All right. Well, anyway, guys, this has been our channel membership stream for January. We're gonna do it again in February. Come up with some ideas. We'll figure out. Just think about it. Always, this is what I say. Just jot things down when you're thinking about it. Like, oh my God, this would be something I'd love to talk about in the next live stream. And we'll do this all again. It'll be a lot of fun. You guys are awesome. Anyway, thank you guys, of course, for being channel members. It totally helps the channel. Helps in many, 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 many ways. So, Ian says everywhere other than North America calls dance clubs disco. Okay, all right, fair enough. Yeah, we have. I guess we have dance clubs here. Well, this is Ottawa, so it's hard to say. I think the entire city closes at 6 o'clock, but I'm not entirely sure on that. Don't quote me on that one. I'm sure there's things that are open. Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I'll be back here again. We'll do this again next month. We get another live stream, of course, on Sunday and then on Wednesday. So yeah, you guys will get tons of me. Until then, guys, thank you very much for dropping by, and we'll see you again next time. Bye, everybody.